Hey everybody, Dave here. Have you tried Power Automate Desktop yet? If you haven't, I would definitely encourage you to do it because it's free. And if you have tried it and you're a little bit confused where to start or where to go with it, here's what I'd suggest. I think the best place to start with any RPA tool, granted, maybe a little bit of training is a good idea, but if you just got the tool for yourself and you just want to try it out, the best thing to do is just to use every single action or command or whatever it's called in that particular RPA tool. Just want to use every single one of them and make sure that you understand how each individual action works. So that's what I'm going to do in Power Automate Desktop over the next few months. I plan to make a video about every group of actions, starting with today, which is going to be about variables. Most of the actions are super easy to use, but I found actually that even the very simple ones, there are some unintuitive things about them. And I wouldn't say it's anybody's fault that it's designed this way. It's just not necessarily apparent about how you should use them. I also figure that there are some actions that might be obvious to me for how to use them, but maybe you're struggling with it and you're just trying to find out how to use that action. That's what I plan to do over the next few months. We'll see how that goes. But today it's going to be about variables. We're going to go through some of the actions like truncate number, add item to list, merge lists, set variable, things like that. Be sure to use the chapters feature in the video or go in the description and click on a timestamp to go straight to the action that you want to use. One thing I want to mention though is I do plan to make the whole flow as like a full runnable flow using all of the actions in that single flow. And that means that if you jump to a later point in the video, it may be hard for you to replicate what I'm doing if a previous action is kind of required to run first. Just recognize that. I think you can still jump around in the video, but I just want to be clear about it. Each section of the video is not going to be totally isolated from the rest. I think it'll be pretty clear once you see it's a full runnable flow when we test this out. So let's go ahead and jump into the variables group of actions in Power Automate Desktop. On the left, you'll see all of the actions that we're going to be working with today. Luckily, I'm not in the way on the video, so you can actually see all of them on the screen. If anything goes behind me, I apologize. Sometimes I'm just not paying attention. But the only setup that I've done is to put a bunch of comments over right here. So if you type comment into the actions search box right here, you could search for a comment, and you could drag it over, and you could type into it. This is non-functional. You can't put breakpoints on this. These don't do anything. They just are comments as labels sort of for sections of this. So what I'm going to do is drop actions underneath each of these comments for each of the actions we're going to work with. Before we actually start with set variable, we have to get a little bit of data. It's not required to do this for you to practice these actions, but I did find it useful for some of them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as a setup, and I'll show you what I did on screen right here in case you want to do something similar and you haven't worked with Excel already. The first thing we're going to do is build a subflow to get data out of Excel. This is not 100% required for testing these actions, but I think that it's helpful. So I'll show you on screen what I've done, and I'll actually just build it right now. So let's go to my folder where I have an Excel spreadsheet called challenge.xlsx. I got this from rpachallenge.com. You can use any spreadsheet that you need to, but this is what I've done. I'll show you what's inside here. So we've just got some random columns and some rows of data. That's all we need. So this is the location of it, C:\test, and then I'll put another backslash and then challenge.xlsx. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to copy this backslash, and then I'm just going to copy this value right here. Let's create a new subflow, and new subflow, we'll call this GetExcelData. And then inside of here, we need some Excel actions. So let's see, we need launch Excel. Do we want a blank document? Nope, we want to open the following document. Here's where we'll paste in that path, C:\test\challenge.xlsx. Do we want to make the instance visible? No. Open as read only, sure. And save. Then I'm going to put close Excel. It's going to automatically put in Excel instance, which matches the output of the launch Excel. Before closing Excel, do not save document, save. And then let's go to get first free row on column. That's not what I want. I want get first free column / row from Excel worksheet. It's automatically putting in Excel instance as the Excel instance variable, which this is going to be correct all the time as long as you're only working with one Excel at a time. And then the variables it'll produce are first free column and first free row. The next thing we need to do is just read. What is this even called? Read from Excel worksheet, Excel instance, and then retrieve. We're going to want a range of cells. The start column will be A, start row will be 1. The end column, here's where we use our variables. We want the first free column -1, because the first free column is a blank column. We don't want to retrieve that. And then the first free row -1, because again, that's the first free row is a blank row. So if you wanted to write into the first free row, then this would be the way to go. And then you just don't subtract 1. Under advanced, we're going to select true on both of these. I don't know that this really matters. Get cell contents as text, but I'm used to working with the values as text when bringing them into an RPA tool. And then first line of range contains column names. This is true because in our spreadsheet, the first row is the column names. And then the variables that will be produced is called ExcelData. Save that. And then let's save. Something that's pretty awesome is that now once you save the flow by either hitting the save or doing Control S, it no longer pops up a window that you need to click OK on to confirm that you've saved the changes. My goodness, that is a quality of life improvement. I can't believe somebody thought it was a good idea to have a pop-up in the first place. So let's go ahead and add a subflow reference to GetExcelData on the main flow. So I need to type in subflow, run subflow, choose the subflow, GetExcelData, save. I'm going to hit Control S to save. And then let's just run this. It's going to run over the subflow, and you'll see it run over all of these. I'm going to change the run delay to 1 millisecond so that it runs as fast as possible. So it launches the Excel, gets the first free column and row, subtracts 1 from each of those, gets the range, and then closes Excel, and it probably ran over the rest of this really fast. So I'm going to open up the Excel data, and you can see it looks the same. These bolded ones are the column names that we can reference, and then here's our 10 rows of data, right? 0 index based, last one is 9. Let's look at the action set variable. So I'm going to drag set variable over onto the flow, and there's 2 things we can do. We can change the name of the variable. So I'm going to set this to count and put a 1 inside this. Okay, and then I'm just going to run this. You can see it'll run our Excel data subflow, and then it's going to set the value of the count variable to 1. So it's a number value. Sounds good. Now what we can do is also for the same variable, just so that we understand this, how this works a little bit more, you can change this to be text as well. Some text here. And we can run this. It'll set the variable to a count of 1. I should probably have put breakpoints. Let's do that. I'll run this again. It's going to go through this, and it should stop before setting the value to some text here. So the value of count is 1. It's a numeric value. And then if I run the rest of it and it sets some text into the count, you'll see it changes the data type of the variable to text. And in previous versions of Power Automate Desktop, what you had to do in some situations, if you had like an input to a flow and you were calling it as a desktop flow, you had to, you can only do string as the data type for inputs. But what you could do is change that string to a number by multiplying the string by the number 1. And that would effectively make it a number if that was a valid thing inside of Power Automate Desktop at the time. So I tested it a couple minutes ago, and it doesn't seem like that's necessary anymore. So I'm not going to actually show that on the screen. You can basically just set this to number or to text. And if what you put into the variable is just a number, it's going to call it a number variable. Now, is that going to have Unintended results, I don't know. Let's test something. What happens if I try to make this like a phone number? But let's say like an account number that begins with zeros. Maybe that'd be better. All right, so this has leading zeros. Let's see if it will put this to be a number, because if it does, that means it'll probably delete those 3 leading zeros, and I don't want that. Let's run this. Okay, right now we have some text here. It's a text variable. Let's run the rest of it. Okay, so it's still a text variable. That's good. Let's try it like this, though. After we have set the variable to be a number data type with a number 1, but then we put something in it that has leading zeros right after that, does it stay as a number or does it stay as text? I do not know the answer to this. Let's find out. Okay, right now, count is a numeric value. To run the next action, it put zeros. Okay, my guess is that Microsoft must have just designed Power Automate Desktop to evaluate the value and determine whether or not it's probably a text value. And one of their rules is if it's got leading zeros. Don't know. So I would suggest if you were gonna use this, a single variable for changing the data type back and forth, or you have a value like this that's questionably a number or a text data type, you probably just want to do some testing around that. But it looks like Microsoft has handled it pretty well here. And then I can run the rest of it still text data type. All right. So that's how you use set variable. It's pretty simple. The next action is increase variable. Now, I actually have no idea why this even exists. It seems completely unnecessary, but we're going to use it anyways because it exists. So what increase variable does is it takes a number and increases it by 1 or by whatever you choose to give it. So here's the variable name input. We'll choose count like we've already created above, and then we're just going to increase it by 1, save, and then let's run this. We'll put a breakpoint. Oh, this actually won't work. I just realized that. So we have some text here, and we're trying to increase that count variable by 1. Yeah, so it says argument value must be a numeric value. So this has to be a number by the time it gets to here. So let's copy set variable and paste it below right here. Okay, so it'll do some text stuff, but then it's going to set it back to 1 before we need to increment it, and then it should work at this point. So let's try running it one more time. And when it gets here, the count is 1. It's a numeric value. So now if I run the rest of it, it will increase the count to 2. Pretty simple, right? There's lots of times when you're designing a flow that you want to increase or decrease a variable by some, number. But what I don't understand is like, why not just use set variable and then, set the count to like count plus 1. That would do the same thing, right? Let's run this. Whenever we get to our first breakpoint, the value of count will be 1 because it set it here. We're going to increase the count by 1, goes to 2, and then we just set the variable count equals count, which is 2, plus 1, so it'll equal 3. Now it's 3. So it seems completely unnecessary to me, but here we are. The next action is decrease variable. Let's drag over decrease variable. This is going to be the same as increase variable except the opposite. So let's grab our count. Let's decrease it by 1. Click save. And then in the same vein as how we did this before, where we can use set variable equals count plus 1, we can also decrease the variable the same way, and you accomplish the same thing. So decreasing the count by 1 and setting the count equals count minus 1 is the same thing. So let's put the breakpoints down here, run this down. What we should get at the end, what we should get by the first breakpoint is 3. because we have set to 1, we added 1, then we added another 1. Now let's decrease it by 1, goes down to 2. We'll decrease by another 1, goes down to 1. So by the end of this, when we run it, the count is going to be equal to 1. And again, there's no benefit to using increase and decrease variable, with the exception that maybe it's a little bit more readable to see increase variable rather than needing to read it like count equal or count to count plus 1. So maybe that's why they did it, just to make it more readable. Our next action is going to be truncate number. Before we actually use it though, let's first create a variable that we can use to truncate, because our count up to this point has just been a single digit number and we need a decimal point to work with. So let's use set variable underneath this truncate number section. I'm going to call this number to truncate. Let's set the value to 95.386. Let's drag truncate number over into the flow. And the first thing that we got to do is choose the number to truncate. I've actually named it number to truncate, so that should be easy to find. Number to truncate. Then you'll see that there is an operation input. That way you can choose how this action works. The first thing we'll do is get the integer part of the number. So if it's 95 point something, we should expect to get 95 out of that. I'm just going to name this trunc integer. And then let's go ahead and copy and paste this. I'm going to go into this one, the second one that I just pasted. I'm going to change the operation to get decimal part. And then this time we're going to produce a variable called trunc decimal. And then I'll copy and paste again. Choose the second one. And then I'm going to change the operation to round number. And then I can choose how many decimal places I want to round it to. Let's round it to 2 decimal places because our input's going to have 3 decimal places. This will change it to 2. And when it rounds, because our last number is a 6, we'd expect that when it rounds, it should go up. So we should see 95.39. The only thing left is to choose the output. So I don't want to use the same variable because I want to look at all the variables together at the end. So we'll call this trunc round. And then we can just, let's save this. I always like to save just in case. I actually haven't had Power Automate Desktop crash on me in since when I first started using it. It runs pretty well now, but I just can't help but save constantly. So let's run this. It's going to run all the way through, and then we can look at the outputs of each of those. So we set number to truncate to 95.386. So right here, you see it says 95.386. Then when we got the integer from that by doing truncate number and we chose the integer operation, here's the integer, 95. And then when we used get decimal part for that operation, it went into trunc decimal. So 95.386 became 0.386. And then truncate number, we used the operation round number. It became 95.39. And that makes sense, right? Because 95.386, that 6 should round up because we were rounding it to 2 decimal places, and now it's 95.39. So if you need to do math operations, this is what you do. There are some things you can do as expressions inside of, like say set variable. There are a few things you can do, but as far as I know, I don't think there's any like expressions or commands that can do things like truncate number. So you have to use these individual actions to accomplish that. The next action will be generate random number. So let's pull that over, put it into our section. The minimum value, I like that it gives you some defaults to work with. So we're actually just going to use that for now. The minimum value for the random number will be 0. The maximum value will be 100. We're going to leave generate multiple numbers off for a second, and we'll come back to this. So minimum value 0, maximum value 100, and then that's going to go into a variable called random number. Man, I also like that. They could have just called this new var, but they're trying to go for a good user experience. And if you just need a random number, they go ahead and have the variable named for you in a way that's more readable. So I like that. Let's save this. And we'll go ahead and test this one. So I do like this. You can right click on the action and hit run from here so we can skip everything above. Later on in testing, when we work with lists, I won't be able to do that because I need to get data from Excel first. But here, this should work. Run from here. It'll only run this one. And so random number is 15. Let's run it one more time and just make sure it gives us a different number, right? So now it's 30. And so that's between 0 and 100. Let's copy this and paste it. In the second one, we'll change the operation that it does to generate multiple numbers. We're going to say that we want 15 numbers, and we want actually the maximum value. Let's make it 10. So minimum value 0, maximum 10. We're generating multiple numbers, and how many numbers will we get? 15. The first thing you'll notice is that the minimum and maximum values being 0 to 10 means we only have, I guess technically we have 11 possibilities there because it could give us a 0. What I wanted to force is to make sure that we get duplicate values. And this is going to be useful later on when we're working with lists and we're removing duplicates and stuff like that. So when we get 15 numbers, some of the numbers in that random list will be the same. And that's something that's important to note about when you're generating a random number. It is each time when it generates a random number, it's not taking into account other numbers it's generated. So this will not always be a unique number. That's not a good way to use this. You'd want to use like a GUID generator for something like that. But for our purposes, just understanding the action, we just want 15 different numbers. Some of them might technically be the same number. As a matter of fact, they will be. So will we allow duplicates? Well, in this situation, it's not possible. If I left this as don't allow duplicates, it's going to throw an error. So maybe we should just go ahead and test that. And of course, it's named our variable output as random numbers. Let's right click on generate random number, generate list of random numbers, run from here. This should throw an error. Yeah, can't generate a list of 15 random numbers between 0 and 10 without duplicates. So I'm going to open this back up and we are going to allow duplicates because I do want that for our testing later. Save. And then let's run this again. This time it gave us a list of numeric values, and you can see it's got sort of rows for us on the left, 0 index based. Can I make this? Can I just please? Okay, let's try this. Here's the list of numbers. Again, don't be confused by the 14. It's 0 index based, so there's 15 here. You can already see that there are 3 7s in this. There's 2 zeros, so we have some duplicates, and we also, have a good list of random numbers. They're in a random order. This is going to be useful for us testing some of the other actions. The next action is going to be create new list. This is another one that I think is funny. I don't know why this action exists, and I'll show you why in a minute. So create new list. You can give it a name. Let's call this countries 1, and then save this. And that's it. This creates a list called countries. Nothing is in it. It's just a list that exists with a name. Now, one thing I suppose this is beneficial, maybe there's some reason why this is useful, but this wouldn't exist over here on the right. Normally, you can't go into the variables and do like a click and add anywhere. There's no way to just add a variable by itself. There has to be some action inside of your flow that uses the variable for that variable to exist. As an example, if I scroll all the way up, where I have set variable, set count to 1, if I delete this and every other action in here that uses the variable count, it will get removed from the variables list. It won't be there anymore. So maybe there's some benefit to that. I don't know what it is right now, though. So this is effectively like a pointless action to me. I'm going to run from here. It creates a list, right? You can see the only thing in it. Oh, so it does create it as a list of general values. But, you'll see in a minute why this is pointless. Now that I have this list, I can set the list to have values. So let's use set variable. And what I'll do is choose countries 1. And we're going to manually type the syntax to create an object, to create a list in that variable. So we need percent symbols around the edges. We also need open close parentheses. Inside of that, we're going to have square brackets. Okay, so this might be a little bit hard to read, but let me put some spaces so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay, inside of all of that, we're going to put just a comma delimited set of values. We'll do Canada with single quotes, comma, United States, India with quotation marks, and Germany. Let's save this. Okay, now let's run from here. It should create a list called countries1, and then it should set these values into that countries1 list. It should effectively have 4 rows of values inside that list afterward. Okay, so let's open up countries1. You can see this is a list of text values. That's one thing that's different. Before, when I created this, it was a list of general values. So that makes me think that it's possible to have multiple multiple data types in this same list. So let's go ahead and test that really quick. I'm going to add a comma and just do like a 1. Hit save. Let's run from here. Countries1. Okay, so that's actually interesting. I did not realize that before. It says list of general values now because it sees that there are some text variables and some number variables. Okay, that's kind of cool. Just learned something new. The next action is to add item to a list. So let's go over and grab that, add item to list. Now what I'm going to do is add an item with this first one, this first input, and then into a list for the second. So let's choose a list to use. I'm going to just type countries 2. And then we're going to add the item Canada. Click save. Let's make sure that this works. So see, here's where it seems a little pointless to even have create new list because you can just add an item to the list and it automatically exists. And then you can use, you know what though? If this didn't exist, if we ran this by itself, would it be capable of creating a list without it having existed already? Let's try that. So let's put a breakpoint here. Let's run from here. And remember, when we do run from here, it doesn't run anything beforehand. So countries1 won't exist as a list. Let's see if just putting this value into a variable automatically makes it a list. Countries1. So it says list of general values. So it could tell that's what we were trying to do. And I suppose just to be absolutely sure, what we should do is use set variable. We should set this to like a, like a 1. So this would be a number when we first run it. Countries. So this is a numeric value. Then I set the countries1 variable to a list, but it's not actually, there's no action here that says add to list or create new list. I'm not using that. So let's run this action, open up countries1. Yeah, so it's a list of general values. It seems a little pointless to even have create new list, but again, could be for maybe readability and just maybe for intuitiveness. Maybe some people are expecting to see that. But it's just like increase variable and decrease variable. It's not necessary. Okay, so now let's delete this because it's just complicating our flow too much. Create new list, and then we're actually going to go remove the 1 from out of here. There we go. And add item to list. Let's run that from here just to make sure that it was working. Oh, we got to step over. Countries2 has Canada as a text value, as one item in this list. Let's add a few more items so we have some test data for later. We're going to put the United States into this list. and add one more. Let's put China into countries 2. So countries 1 will have Canada, United States, India, and Germany. And then countries 2 should have Canada, United States, and China. Let's run this time from the very beginning to make sure we don't have any errors. We're going to let it run all the way through to the end. Okay, so we have countries 1, which has Canada, United States, India, and Germany. And countries 2, which has Canada, United States, and China. The next action is sort list. So let's go grab sort list and drag it onto the flow. We're going to choose a list to sort. I'm going to do that on 2 of the lists that we've already worked with. So I'm going to choose countries. Now you might see sort by list items properties and click that and then look at what it shows and be very confused what to do. Let me just point out that when it says list items properties, it's not referring to columns inside of the list because there is only one column in a list. So it's pointless to point to a certain column. I will show you after we do a couple of actions here. I'm going to come right back during this section of actions under sort list. I'm going to show you how to use this part, and it's going to be a little more complex involving files, but I think that I should go ahead and show you how to use this part without just skipping over it. So first, let's just do something simple. Let's sort the countries 1 list, and then we'll copy this and paste it. And we're also going to sort the random numbers list. Right, so we've got, we want to delete that. So we just want random numbers right here, save. Okay, so I'm going to run this whole flow, and it is going to, let's actually put a breakpoint here, breakpoint here. Let's run this. After it's run everything up to this point and it's done the break right before sorting those lists, I'm going to go over and open up countries, make this window bigger, just so we can see it is not sorted alphabetically either way. So it's not Z to A and it's not A to Z because U would come at the very bottom. And if it were backwards completely, then U would be at the top. And then let's look at random numbers. So this, as we saw before, these numbers are in a completely random order, so we want to sort those. I'm going to step over this and step over this. Both of them should be now sorted. So this by default is going to sort A to Z, so C, G, I, U for that order. And then let's go to the random numbers. Same thing for this one. It's done at A to Z, or in order of ascending. So all 3 zeros are at the top, and then 1s, and there's 3s, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. So that's sorted in order. Now let's go back and use sort list again, but let's do it a little more complex using that other feature that I kind of glossed over a minute ago. So let's copy sort list, and let's do list to sort. We haven't created our list, so let's come back to that actually. Let me go over here and go down to files. I think this is a good way to show that. Do we want folders? Yeah, we want folders. So get files in folders. Let me open up that folder. Here, C:\test is what we're gonna test on. Ignore the folders up here. Those aren't going to be retrieved. It's only going to be these files right here. And what we want to see is that once we've sorted it, we should see it in this order of challenge, challenge temp, CSV. So let's go test that. So C:\test. First, let's see, include subfolders, no, advanced. Okay, we're going to turn off all the sorting that you can do technically in this action because we're just trying to test the sort list. Let's save this. Okay, I'm just going to run this one by itself. Okay, so it got all the files in that folder, put it into files. So this is a list of files, but it's instead of being a list of just text items, it's a list of a data type or a object type called file. And inside this, each of these files, it shows something here, right? This is its full file path, but it has more properties and more things that go along with it. So if you click to see more, you'll see that each of these files has different properties that we can use for it. These are the properties that you'll use when you want to go sort something. Now, if this is not a file that you're working with that you're trying to sort and you want to sort on some property, I don't have any input to give you for that unless I see that example, because I don't know how this works for other types of objects and stuff. Files, I just already knew in Windows that they have properties associated with them. So like if you read a bunch of a column from Excel, I don't know that that would have any properties associated with it, if that makes sense. Okay, so what we're going to choose is the creation time, and then maybe we'll try something else, like, let's say, we could just sort it by name first. Or size. Let's do that. Let's do name and size. Yeah. So sort list. Oh, we got to stop. We want to sort the list. Let's put in files. And we want to sort by list items properties. And remember, we just saw a bunch of properties. So let's put in name. We're going to sort ascending first. I'm going to paste this again. In the second one, I'm going to choose name sort by descending. We're going to copy this and paste it one more time. This time I'll put in size ascending. So we should see smaller files to larger files. Let's put a breakpoint. And then, right. So what I'm going to do is run from here. This will get all the files that are in this folder over here. We have the size column and the name column. So first what we should see is it's going to sort, what was it, ascending. So we should see it in this order. Let's run the action. Okay, so we should see the list. Maybe if I make this window a little smaller, then we can see all of it. Let's open up files. And now it should have sorted this to be in the same order. So we've got challenge, challenge temp CSV, challenge temp XLSX, CRM data, image text. So it's sorted in the same order. Now we should see it flip the order this way when we run sort list descending. Okay, so now at the top is text file, and then process list, image text, etc. And then the last thing we did was, I've already forgotten. Oh, we're sorting ascending by size. So let me drag the size column over. We're going to sort ascending, so smallest to largest file. So we should see this list change to be this order. Let's open up files. And then it's now text file, challenge temp, process list, CRM data. So this looks to be working. I wanted to do that little bit of testing. I know it took a little bit of extra time, but I kind of wanted to show this is one way that you can use this sort list, and that it kind of just is dependent upon your having an object type that has properties in it. Otherwise, it's going to be, useless. The other thing is that the documentation, sometimes it seems like for .NET documentation, matches up with things like property types, and it makes sense for files. The property types you'd look up in the .NET documentation for files is going to match up to what you'd use here, but I found it to just be a lot easier to go ahead and just do a little test, right? Do get files in folder, and then whatever it gives me from that, I look inside the properties here, and that's how I know what all of my options are for properties, rather than trying to go Google, what are all the properties for files? You don't really need to do that. You can look at it like this. The next action is remove item from list. So let's go grab that, remove item from list. In this, it looks like you can, right, so you can remove item by index or by value. So first, let's just do it by index. And remember, index is the number that is associated with a specific row in that list, and it is 0 index based. So the first row is index 0, second row is index 1. So for our countries list, let's remove, actually, I cannot remember what was in our countries list. So countries 1 has Canada, United States, India, and Germany. Let's remove Germany from that list. I'm going to actually add one here. Germany, let's do Japan. And then what we're going to do is try to remove Germany and Japan, but we're going to reference them by their index number for Germany and the actual text for Japan. Let's go back down to remove item from list. This one will remove, I've forgotten already. We'll remove Germany. So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3. So we'll remove index 3 from list countries 1. Save. I'm going to copy this and paste it. And in the second one, I'm just going to change this to remove item by value. We'll put the value Japan and remove all item occurrences. We'll say true, right? In case you had duplicates in that list. Remove from list countries 1. All right, so let's put some breakpoints, remove the other breakpoints, and then let's run it. When we get to this point, we should see something like 5 countries in countries 1. Canada, Germany, India, Japan, United States. Right, and we have sorted it. So that was actually important to think about. So this would actually not work because I'm removing index 3, which would be Japan, and then I'm trying to remove Japan. It probably won't throw an error because I assume now I have to find out. So run next action. This removed index 3. So now Japan is not in there anymore. But if I try to remove Japan from this, I think it won't throw an error. Oh, it threw an error. Okay, good to know. Okay, let's change this to remove Germany instead. Oh, yeah, we want to remove Germany. Run the action. Is it running? What is it doing? Oh, whoops. Okay, so we remove index 3 from countries 1, which will be Japan. Obviously, you would normally not just do that without looking, right? You would know why you're removing index 3. Like you've already retrieved index 3, you've determined it shouldn't be there, and now you're removing something from that spot. Okay, run next action. Note that whenever you change this, now index 3, if you were to remove index 3 again, that would be pointing to United States because it moved 1 up in the list. Now we're going to remove all occurrences of Germany from countries 1. So now Germany is not in the list. We just have Canada, India, and United States. The next action is reverse list. So let's grab that action. This one's pretty simple. You're just going to choose a list like random numbers. Save that. And whenever this runs, it's going to reverse the order of the random numbers. So let's go ahead and run everything up to this point. And then once it gets to our breakpoint, then we'll look at the random numbers list. We'll see what order it is. Okay, so the random numbers are in order of A to Z or ascending, so 0 to 10. And then whenever we reverse the list, it should show us 10 to 0. And it does. So it's pretty simple. Just takes your list and reverses the order. Now that would probably, you would need to pay attention to how it's going to be ordering this because there are times when this may not order in the way you wanted. So as an example, if it was treating these numbers actually as text, then it might sort, like it might put this 1 0. If it's treated as text, it might be way down here. So I'd say that's the only thing to be concerned about. Just make sure that you know for the data that you're trying to sort that it actually makes sense. But I think you'd probably check that anyways. The next action is shuffle list. So this would be kind of like randomize the order of a list, sort of the opposite of sorting a list. Now, let's just choose a list like random numbers. And let's see what this does. So I think we already have, right, we've already run it, but let's go ahead and run it again. Everything from the beginning, set the breakpoint on the action that we want to test. And it's going to run everything. When we get to the point of this new action that we added, it should be in reverse order because we just ran reverse list going from 10 down to 0. That's the order of it. So let's do shuffle list now. And now random numbers is in a random order, which granted, if we had left it like it was originally before we sorted this list, random numbers would already be in a random order. But this is just to show what you can do. Let's go ahead and use shuffle list on a different one. So let's say for countries 1, it's CIU. So Canada, India, United States. Let's use this to shuffle countries 1. We'll just run from here. Okay, it looks like it's, is that going to work? It's not going to work. So when I ran it again, it cleared out the values. So let's run from the beginning. And then let's go look at countries. So Canada, India, United States is the order. Let's shuffle the list and see what it looks like afterward. So now it's India, United States, Canada. Not crazy different, right? Because it's only 3 rows, but it does work for sure. The next action is merge lists. Let's go grab that from the left side. And the 2 lists that we're going to merge, you probably guessed it already, but it's going to be countries 1 and countries 2. So let's pick that. First list is going to be countries 1. Second list, countries 2. The variable produced is called output list. So I'm going to rename this to, say, countries. And save this. And you'll note, as it said, this is not going to change the original lists. Countries 1, countries 2 will still exist. But now there's going to be a new list where it has the combined rows from each of these. So let's go ahead and test that. Breakpoint on that action. Run it. And like I pointed out earlier, there are duplicates between the two, right? Canada, for example, is in both lists. But what I would expect for this to do is to not overwrite that, right? So I should have a duplicate of Canada in the list afterward. So countries as, yeah, Canada, India, Canada, India, United States, Canada, United States, China. So there are 2 duplicates inside of this, United States and Canada. The next action is subtract lists. So let's go grab subtract lists. And this is going to ask us again for a first list and a second list. It says compare 2 lists and create a new list with the items that are in the first one, but not in the second one. What this will effectively do is if you say like you had a list of countries and you were trying to decide which of them you wanted to travel to, and then maybe your second list contains a list of countries that are banned for you to travel to for whatever reason. So the first list will contain, say, countries 1. And let's say countries 2 has a list of those countries I'm not allowed to travel to. I don't know why I wouldn't be allowed to, but I'm just saying. Then we want to put the results into countries. And then what we're doing is taking this countries 1 list, right? Only countries from this will end up in the result. And any countries that show up in list 2 will not show up in the list, right? So let's save that. We will run it up to that point like we always do. We'll take a look at these variables before we step over it. Okay, so this is before we have subtracted lists. This is, right, countries 1 is India, United States, and Canada. So let's say that that's a list of countries I want to travel to. And then countries 2 has a list of countries for whatever reason that I'm not allowed to travel to. Canada, United States, and China. So you'll see India is not in this list. Whenever I step over this, the only thing left in the list should be India. And so there it is. Countries only has India because it's the only one in countries 1 that is not in countries 2. The next action is clear list. we just choose a list like countries, and we want to clear the list, right? So we have India in it right now. We just want to clear all the countries out of it. Maybe we're doing it for memory's sake, or maybe we're doing it just to make sure that there's nothing left over when we go to work with it again later. Whatever the reason is, you have the option to clear a list. So I'm going to set a breakpoint here, run, and we'll see that there is one country in that list by the time we go to run this. And then, right, so clear list countries, we've got India inside of this list. I'll run the rest of it. And then now you can see that all of the countries, there was only one, but it removed everything from that list. The next action is remove duplicate items from list. We are just going to choose a list. Let's do random numbers. Then there is an option that says ignore text case while searching for duplicate items. I feel like they added this. I do not remember this being there. You know, it's a little frustrating that things get added and changed in Power Automate Desktop without that stuff being in the notes for updates. If you're watching this and you know of where the specific notes are of every change that occurs from one version to the next for Power Automate Desktop, I would love to know that. Maybe it's on the forum or something. I just haven't looked. But it's kind of frustrating when things are added and changed, and I have no way of knowing that it occurred. I have to go just search through everything to figure it out. Okay. So we're going to remove duplicate items from random numbers. And right now I'm going to leave this as not, like this doesn't matter what I would do here because these are numbers and numbers don't have case, like uppercase and lowercase. So I'm just going to save this and then we'll test this just to make sure it works. So this removes duplicate items from the random numbers list. When this finishes, I'm going to open up remove duplicate, or I'm going to open up random numbers just to show you what's in here. Okay, so we've got, right, most recently we have shuffled this list. So you can see there's multiple 7s, multiple 0s, multiple 10s. Whenever we run remove duplicate items, we should see all those duplicates go away. There we go. We've got 1, 2, 4, 0, 10. No, there's no duplicates here. It's a little hard to tell because the list is shuffled. So maybe it would be better to have sorted the list like ascending or something like that first. But I think it's pretty clear that it removed the duplicates. Now to use remove duplicate items from list, to use that extra option that we saw, let me open this up. We're going to remove duplicates from the countries list, and we are going to ignore text case while searching for duplicate items. You know what? Actually, let's do it twice. The first time we will make it case sensitive. So ignore text case while searching for duplicate items. If this thing is the color black or this little dot is on the left side right now, that means it's false. It's on the right, it's true. So while it's false, that means it is going to treat two words that are the same letters, but one of them has a case that's different. Then it's going to treat those as separate values entirely. If this is set to true, it treats them the same. So it's going to ignore case whenever this is true. So let's try both of those. I think up here, yeah, we are clearing the countries list. So let's go ahead and copy and paste merge lists. Drag that down here right after remove duplicate items from list for random numbers. We're going to put basically put more values into countries so that we can use that. The other thing I'm going to do is add an item to the countries list. So add item. We actually want to type, let's do Canada in lowercase. And we'll put this into the countries list. Okay, so what we've done is we've added merge lists to merge countries, both of those into the countries list. We're adding an item to the list, which is a lowercase Canada. So you can see it has a lowercase c. And then let's put a breakpoint here and here. This one is going to remove duplicate items from the list. And it is going to be case sensitive. This one is going to remove items from the list, and it is case insensitive when we set true here. So case sensitive, case insensitive. All right, so let's run this. You know, one more thing I want to do is sort. So let's do sort the countries list. I want all the Canadas to be next to each other in the list. Okay, so let's run this. All right, and we have just merged the list again, added item, and we sorted. Before we remove duplicates, then let's open up the countries list, and we'll see that at the top we've got 3 rows for Canada, but one of them is a lowercase. So the first time we run this action, it should treat this as a separate row, a totally separate value from these two. It should remove the second row, it'll keep this one, and it'll keep this one. And the same thing for United States, it's going to remove this row and keep this one. Let's step over this, open up countries. Okay, so the first time we ran it, it did remove the duplicate for Canada with uppercase and a duplicate for United States, but it left the lowercase Canada here. So if we want to do this case insensitive, remember we set that value to true inside of this, and we'll do run next action. Now open up countries, and you'll see it kept the lowercase Canada because it was first. It removed the uppercase Canada because it was second and considered a duplicate, and it was case insensitive. That's pretty cool. I also, I just learned that. I had to look that up right before I did this because, well, when I say look it up, I mean, I actually tried it right before this, and that's kind of cool. I think that was added later on. I do not remember that setting being there. The next action is find common list items. So let's go grab that. Find common list items. We are going to use our countries lists. So let's choose 1 and choose 2. And then variables produced, we will put this into countries. Let's change the breakpoint locations, run this. Okay, so we are trying to find items that are common to both lists, which I think is the same thing as saying inner join. Am I saying that right? I think I am. Anyway, countries 1, United States, Canada, and India. Countries 2 has Canada, United States, and China. So instead, this time what we should come out with is Canada, United States inside of countries because that's common to both lists. United States and Canada. There we go. So still on find common list items, it occurs to me that remove duplicate items from list has the option to ignore the case of the text, but find common list items does not do that. That's interesting. It seems like it should. So let's go ahead and test what happens when we run this, when there is a row in here where the case is different. So let's just copy Canada again, and we will bring this down here. Okay, so we're going to add Canada with lowercase c into, not into countries 1. We want to add it into countries 1. Yeah. And so it should add into countries 1. It should find items that are common to both. And let's see. Oh, I need Canada in both sides. No. We don't want to do Canada. We want to try one like China. So China is in countries 2, but not in countries 1. If I add China to countries 1, it's technically in both lists, but only if you consider it case insensitive. Let's find out what happens. All right, so let's look at countries 1. It has China, lowercase c. Countries 2 has China with an uppercase C. Let's run over this and see what comes out. Okay, so it's definitely case sensitive. It did not put China into the output because it considers lowercase c and uppercase C to be completely different. It seems like if remove duplicate items from list can be case insensitive, then find common items in list should also be able to do that. That could be an improvement. The next action is retrieve data table column into list. So this is the point where having that subflow, if you didn't watch this at the beginning of the video, having this GetExcelData to get some data into a variable called ExcelData, you'll want to make sure you go back and watch that and do it. Or you can just look at what I have here. If you just replicate this, it will, it'll get data out of Excel. You'll need to make sure you have an Excel spreadsheet there, though, to begin with. So I thought I was going to use it more throughout the rest of these actions, but I just didn't. So that's why I put the GetExcelData so high up at the beginning. But it turns out I'm only using it down here. So here we are. But we retrieve data table column into list is the action that we want to do. So let's drop this in. The data table is going to be ExcelData. And you can actually see the type. It says data table right here. And then column name or index. Let's get the first, let's get the first name column. And then the variable produced. Let's call this column first name. Parameter data table argument data table must be a data table. Oh, I did not notice that. Okay, so just get the variable name for the data table here, and then the column name, first name, output to column first name. Okay, and then let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we're going to run this item. It retrieved the first name column and put it into column first name. So at the top, let's open up this. Okay, so this is a list that just contains the one column from that spreadsheet. Let me open up the spreadsheet really quick. You'll see here's the first name column, John down through Laura. And so we can close this, John down through Laura. So column first name, this is the name of the list. What you can technically do, and I think some RPA tools make you do this, is kind of weird. Maybe some programming languages are intended to be worked with like this. Instead of having a multi-dimensional array, which is effectively what a data table is, you have to work with a data table, which has multiple columns, as entirely separate lists. So you would need to extract the first name column, the last name column, the address column, all that stuff as separate entire lists, and then keep them in sync. So when you loop into the first row of one of the lists, you loop into the first row of the second list and that kind of stuff. Very crazy to me. It blows my mind that there are not better data table operations in Power Automate Desktop. There has to be eventually. I cannot imagine they don't add more ability to work with data tables, because who wants to extract all the columns as separate lists? That's ridiculous. Now, granted, we can already loop through data tables now. You can do that. You can get data out of it. You can set data into it and stuff. But there has to be better support for it. It just blows my mind that there are so few ways to interact with data tables in here. Like, you can't create a data table in here. As far as I know, there's no way to create a data table directly in here. You have to read it out of Excel to get a data table or something like that. So, I don't know how often you actually want to use this, but you do have it as an option. You have a lot of there's a lot of actions you can do on lists. So if you need to do it, it'd just be annoying, honestly, to use this. So personally, I don't think I'm ever going to use this unless I find myself just like, I cannot possibly handle it another way. I'm never going to use this action. That's a fact. That's just how it is. Just to point out, you can loop over this list and loop over the rows just like you can for a data table. There's no difference there. And have fun with this action, I guess. Maybe I should just move on. I probably shouldn't be making fun of this action so much. If you see a huge benefit to this, please let me know in the comments of the video, because I just don't get it. The next action is convert JSON to custom object. And then after that, it's going to be convert custom object to JSON. So converting a string of JSON into an object in here. And then after that, converting that object back into JSON. This is the most complex of all of these actions. I'm going to show you one way that you can do this. I'm in no way suggesting this is what you're limited to, or even that this is the best way to do it. I don't know all of the ways that this can work. I've only tested it a little bit. So first, let me show you the JSON that we're going to use to create a custom object. Let's go into my notepad. Yeah. So let's pretend like what you're doing is you've queried an API, and the API is supposed to return to you a single result of like a person. And then what you can do is manipulate this JSON in any way you want, as far as like the values in these fields. You can't necessarily add fields to it, but let's say you change values you want in this, and then you send it back to the API. So let's do that now. Pretend like we have just received this. I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it, paste it into set variable action. And we're pretending like we just called an API and retrieved this back. So let's go in here, do set variable. Let's just name this variable API response. And then we're going to paste this. Whoops, did I just mess something up? No, I think I'm good. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It's a little hard to tell from this view, but just note that the phone number and address are nested inside of the contact info field. Maybe I should go ahead and point this out because you're not used to JSON. The way this is formatted is it's wrapped by curly braces, and then in quotation marks for the fields and the values, put like a field name, which is ID, value 5321, and then a comma at the end. And that's one field value pair. And then first name and Dave is another field value pair. I guess I should say name value pair, but whatever. And then another field and a value. And then contact info, instead of having a single value like Dave or 5321, it's got its own little object inside of it. And this contains its own fields. So here we have curly braces to wrap the whole thing, just like we did up here and down here. Inside that is a field name, value, comma, field name, value, and then there's no comma at the end because there's no more fields after it. So I just want to point that out. That may not be super helpful that I pointed it out, but I don't know how much you do or don't know. I pretty much just typed this out, and I'm pretending like this is what the API is responding with as far as the structure of a person in a database or something. All right, so we've got this here, and I'm going to hit save. Okay, so this should set our API response variable to have that value. And then what I want to do is convert JSON, because JSON is a string or a text value. I'm going to use the variable that I just created, API response. And then when we convert this from JSON to the object, I might name this person actually. Yeah. So it's going to create an object or a variable called person, and then we can work with that. So let's save it. Okay, and change my breakpoint. Run it. So we should see a new variable pop up. There's API response, and it'll get set the data that I told it to. So this is what it looks like. Okay, before we have converted it into an object. So this is just a string of text. I know that it's got different lines, but this is effectively like you could make this all in one line and that would be fine. This is just one string of text. Now we're going to convert API response to a custom object called person. I named it person. Remember, it doesn't matter what you name this. You name it anything you want to. Run the action. Unexpected end when reading object. Okay. So maybe Power Automate Desktop does not handle this very well yet. So let's try removing all of the line ends. I don't know why it wouldn't be able to handle that. Find out here in a second if that was the problem. Okay. So I think this is all in one line now. Yep. So this is all in one line. Let's see if that was the problem. I do not actually know. Okay, let's run the action. Unexpected end when reading object. Did we format this incorrectly? I think we did. Yeah. That's what it is. Okay, so let's go back in here. I think what I did is I accidentally hit backspace and I deleted this. So it was expecting, an identifier for the end of the object, and it didn't have it. So let's put the curly brace back, copy all of this. So maybe, because I thought that Power Automate had, they'd changed it so it could handle multi-line strings or multi-line text. Let's replace all of this. Yeah, so now you see there's two curly braces now. Before there was only one curly brace at the end. The reason you have to have two is that there's sort of this nested object right here, and then the whole object like this. So you have to have two sets of curly braces. I think that it'll work this time. And run. Okay, so it converted it. Let's see, where did we put it? Person. So let's go down to person, open up this. Okay, so this time, instead of it being a string, let me go show you what that looked like before. This was the string or the text value for API response, which, yeah, it's got the fields and the values, but we don't really have a way to reach in and use those values somehow. So what we do is we convert it into a custom object. It just takes the JSON, it creates an object based upon that structure. And so now I can go into person, and you'll see that it has a name value pairs in here. And inside of contact info, it has an object inside there. We can click more. And now there's this nested custom object inside here that has two name value pairs inside of it. Let me show you now how you would work with that data. One of these is going to be a little bit weird. Let's use set variable again. We are going to set the variable. Actually, first let's get it. Let's set this to phone number. And we want to set it to, let's get our custom object person. Now I know that there's a field called, like, I've forgotten it already. There's a field called contact info, and then inside that a field called phone number. So let's get contact info phone number. Like that. So it references the overall object, and then a field inside that called contact info, and a field inside that called phone number or property. Note that it would not look exactly like this if you were looping through this. I think you might have to use, index numbers for the sort of the row within the JSON response. If there were multiple rows, you'd have to deal with that, is all I'm saying. But in this case, it's a pretty simple one. There's only one person inside this. Okay, so it changed it. Now you see it says set the variable phone number to person.contactinfo.phone number. So you can see it understands that it's looking at properties or fields inside of this. Let's go ahead and test this. I think I can run from here, maybe. Of course not. I wish it would just leave the values there so I could run from there. But we have to run the whole thing again, I guess. Just want to make sure that we are doing it correctly to get the phone number out of there. So let's run the next action. Okay, we have our person object. We would expect to get the phone number 111-222-333, and that should get set into phone number right here. There, so that worked. We have our phone number of 111-222-333. So let's say that now we just want to check if that phone number is correct for some reason. Let's do a set variable up here. We'll call this new phone number. And we'll just set this to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. That's a new phone number we want to set. So let's check to make sure that the phone number we just retrieved is correct. Let's do phone number. Where's phone number? Okay, so does first true or false if phone number equals new phone number. So maybe to make this more clear, so if the phone number is not equal to this phone number, then what we want to do inside here is, let's say that phone number does not equal new phone number, then we will use set variable. This is where it gets a little weird. Not sure why it does this, but we know we want to set it to the value new phone number. And the custom object was called, it's person. So person.contactinfo.phone number. Okay, so you can see I typed this whole thing out. I just for the record, I typed out person.contactinfo.phone number. When I tested this earlier, it deleted contact info and phone number when it saved it, but it's still there. Okay, so new phone number should go into this field. Didn't delete it this time. Okay, well, we need to keep an eye on it. I think sometimes this .contactinfo.phone number will just disappear sometimes, and I don't know why. Okay, so if the phone number is different, then we set the new phone number, and then at the end, when in our next action, we'll convert it back. But let's make sure this works first. Run. Oh, I meant to run. When it stops at our breakpoint, we'll look at the person object. Actually, so the new phone number is 123, and the person has a phone number of 111. And when we extracted that phone number out, it went into phone number, which is here, so 111. Okay, so phone number does not equal new phone number, right? 123 does not equal 111. So when we step, it should go inside the loop, and now it's going to set the value that's in that custom object by using the dot notation. So if I open up person, now you can see that the phone number is 123-456-7890 instead of 111 like it was before. So this is the new phone number. Okay, so we've now set it in our custom object, and then we can go out of this. And then in the next action, we'll convert it back into JSON, pretending like we're sending it back to the API. And the next action, and really the last action, is convert custom object to JSON. We are going to be using the custom object that we created when we went over this action for convert JSON to custom object. So we have our object called person. Let's convert person back to API. And then just to be clear what this is referring to. So we're going to convert the object that we created before back into the API. And then once we run this, so let's go ahead and do that now, we can compare to make sure that the API response we got before, so say we queried for a person, we got a person back, we want to make sure that our back to API message does not match what we got in before because we changed the phone number. So let's see, we want to look at API response. This is the one we got back initially. So you can see phone number is 111. And then what we're expecting is to see a JSON formatted message called back to API. Okay, so this one's not formatted as pretty. Let's just copy this and put it in a notepad. And I'm going to use a plugin called JSON Viewer to format it. Okay, so you can see this was the original message, has 111 as the phone number. And now the new message is a phone number of 123, but all the rest of it, when I click back and forth between these, that's the only thing that changes. That's the goal. It was get a JSON response from an API, convert it into an object that we can work with in Power Automate Desktop, change a value within that so that now it's something like this, but then convert it back into JSON because you can't send objects through the internet. You have to send it in a supported format, and JSON is one of those. So let's, so that's it. We can now take that and we're pretending like at this point we would send it back to the API. This would be the payload or the body of the message that you send back to it. Well, that's it. We have gone through every single action in the variables group of Power Automate Desktop. A couple of those were kind of difficult to work with, especially the custom objects and JSON ones. And then some of them were just extremely easy to use. There are probably some other things that I could bring up about some of these, but I do plan to come back and use a number of these variables actions when we go through and use like conditionals and loops and flow control and stuff like that, we will inevitably use a bunch of these actions all over again. If you have any questions about any specific ones that I didn't, go over a certain scenario or whatever, feel free to drop a comment and ask. I try to respond. Sometimes I miss the comments for months, but I'll try to notice it right away and respond. And as always, if you have something that you want to suggest, something I should change, then let me know. If there's something I did wrong, that's especially what I want to know. If there's a better way to do things and stuff like that. But for now, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.